Imagine living in a world where there was this literal clock ticking down, the Doomsday Clock, right there for everyone to see. Not just, the usual threat of war, but something else, unseen, kind of insidious, maybe even next door. That was pretty much the reality in 1950s America. And the wild thing is, these huge fears played out not really in politics, but on the big screen, through things like giant bugs and, believe it or not, shrinking men. So today we're doing a deep dive into this fascinating world of 1950s science fiction movies. We're going to explore how films like The Day the Earth Stood Still or The Incredible Shrinking Man, which you might just think of as B movies, were actually, well, more than that. They were these powerful allegories, ways for society to sort of process its biggest anxieties, the absolute terror of atomic war and that chilling paranoia of the Red Scare. Yeah, our mission here is to unpack this symbolic language in five really key films from the 50s, and you'll see this clear path, this trajectory of fear changing over the decade. How the threat in movies started as this external political thing, then it became a monster we kind of create ourselves, and finally it turned completely inward. A crisis of the self. So get ready for some, hopefully, surprising facts and maybe some aha moments.
Yeah.
You might end up rethinking these classics. Let's get into it.
Okay, yeah. To really get these films, you have to picture the scene. America, right after World War II. The dread of the atomic bomb was just immense. It hung over everything. It's kind of wild to think. Back in 1947, the scientists who made the bomb introduced this icon, the Doomsday Clock.
Yeah.
It showed up on the cover of the Bulletin of the Atomic Scientists, and it started at just 7 minutes to midnight. Chillin'.
7 minutes. Wow, that's such a stark image. But how did that feel for everyday Americans? Was it just a concept, or did people really feel that clock ticking?
Oh, it felt very real, and things escalated so fast. You had the Soviet Union testing their own bomb in 49. Then by 1953, the U.S. develops the H-bomb, the hydrogen bomb, which they said was 1,000 times more powerful than Hiroshima. So public anxiety was, well, it was everywhere. By 1951, get this, half of all Americans said they felt unsafe from an atomic attack right where they lived. Imagine feeling that constantly.
Half the country.
Yeah.
It's huge. So besides the clock, how did the government talk about this, and what were some of the maybe stranger ways they told people to prepare?
Right. Well, the government reaction has been called a campaign of managed dread. Trying to control the fear, but also keep people alert. We saw those civil defense films like the famous Duck and Cover One, giving this sort of illusion you could survive it. And maybe the most disturbing thing, schools were actually issuing dog tags to kids so their bodies could be identified after an attack.
Dog tags for school children. Wow.
Yeah. And this huge external fear, this atomic annihilation fear, it was tied up with another fear, an internal one.
Which, yeah, that brings us straight to the Red Scare. Senator Joseph McCarthy whipping up this paranoia about subversive communists hiding everywhere, schools, unions, the government itself. What did that do to people psychologically?
It created this really poisonous atmosphere of suspicion, neighbor watching neighbor. But what's really key is how these two fears, the bomb and the communists, kind of fused together. Think about high-profile spy cases like the Rosenbergs, Julius and Ethel, executed for stealing atomic secrets. That directly linked the enemy within to helping the enemy without. The idea was these spies inside America were pushing us closer to nuclear war.
So in this pressure cooker of dread, American sci-fi movies kind of step into the void. They become this main cultural space for working through these twin fears using, monsters, aliens, disasters as symbols for this shared nightmare. And we're going to trace how that cinematic threat changes, right? From outside political problems to monsters of our own making and then finally turning inward.
Exactly. Let's start in 1951. It's a really crucial year because you get two films with completely opposite messages. First, there's The Day the Earth Stood Still. Now, remember, this is peak anti-communist hysteria, lots of aggressive patriotism, and this film comes out with this incredibly bold, liberal critique of Cold War nationalism and militarism. It's basically endorsing the idea of the United Nations, which was pretty controversial and viewed with suspicion back then.
Okay, The Day the Earth Stood Still. So Klaatu, the alien, what's his core message? How does it hit those Cold War nerves?
Well, Klaatu lands in Washington, D.C., looking very human, and he delivers this really blunt warning. He says, humanity's atomic weapons and your constant fighting are a threat to the whole interplanetary neighborhood, basically. And then this message gets wrapped up in some really strong Christian symbolism. Klaatu's whole story mirrors Jesus, comes from the heavens, uses the name Mr. Carpenter, preaches peace, gets betrayed, killed, resurrected, and then ascends. It really frames the whole nuclear issue as this big moral test for mankind's soul.
And Gort. You can't forget Gort, the big silent robot. What's he represent? He's more than just, like, Cool alien tech, yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Gord is crucial. He's this incredibly powerful metaphor for the atomic bomb itself, and also for that emerging idea of mutually assured destruction, MAD. He represents absolute world-ending power, kept in check only by those specific words, Klaatu Barada Nikto. It shows technology may be getting beyond our moral control, a real aha moment in the film.
It's kind of amazing this film even got made with that message during the Hollywood blacklist. That was a time of intense fear and self-censorship in the studios. How did they manage it?
Well, using science fiction was key. It was often seen as, less serious, maybe escapist. So it became this vehicle for coded dissent. An alien could say things about peace and militarism that a human character couldn't without getting attacked politically. And the director, Robert Wise, he really leaned into that. He used this less is more style, focusing on atmosphere. He even used real newscasters, Elmer Davis, H.V. Coltonborn, and that stark, almost noir-like black and white filming. It made the fantasy feel disturbingly plausible.
Yeah, and the music. Bernard Herrmann's score is incredible. Those eerie theremin sounds, the organs, the brass.
Yeah.
It just creates this constant tension.
It really does. That score is the sound of Cold War anxiety. Okay, but then, the very same year, 1951, you get Howard Hawks' The Thing from Another World, and this film is like the polar opposite, ideologically speaking, where the day the Earth stood, still pushed for reason, the Thing is pure Red Scare paranoia made flesh, or, well, vegetable matter. It absolutely champions a military, aggressive reaction to an alien threat that's shown as just completely monstrous and evil.
So if Klaatu is about talking things out, how does The Thing represent that us versus them, enemy at the gates feeling?
Well, the main conflict in the movie is basically a debate staged as action.
Sure.
You've got the practical, no-nonsense Air Force Captain Pat Hendry versus the scientist Dr. Carrington, who's dangerously idealistic. Carrington actually says scientific knowledge is more important than human life. The film clearly sides with Hendry, the military man. It reflects this post-Hiroshima distrust of science that isn't tied to security. And the Thing itself. It's a perfect stand-in for the communist threat, as they saw it. A humanoid plant thing, someone called it a blood-sucking intellectual carrot, which is great. It drains life, reproduces asexually, taking over. It embodied the fear of an ideology hostile to human life and individuality.
Right, hostile to the American way, basically. And defeating it takes, well, not diplomacy.
Definitely not diplomacy. It takes teamwork, classic American can-do ingenuity, and overwhelming force setting it on fire, electrocuting it. It's a very clear message. Contain and destroy the enemy through violence. The whole film feels claustrophobic, paranoid. That isolated Arctic base is like a mini Cold War world. Yeah. And this dialogue is super fast, overlapping, Hawksian dialogue. It creates this frantic, panicked energy.
And it ends with that unforgettable warning spoken right to the camera, right to us watching. Tell the world, watch the skies everywhere. Keep looking, keep watching the skies. Chilling.
It echoes those government warnings about communists infiltrating society.
Yeah.
So yeah, these two films, same year, totally different views. The Day the Earth Stood Still gives us a rational alien, and the problem is human paranoia. The Thing gives us an evil monster, and fighting is the only option. Hollywood was definitely a battleground for these ideas.
Okay, so moving past 51 into the mid-50s, the focus of these monster movies starts to shift, doesn't it? It's less about purely external threats, whether they're invaders or warnings, and more about, well, the consequences of our own action. The monsters are still out there, but now they're explicitly linked to our atomic hubris.
That's exactly right. And The Beast from 20,000 Fathoms from 1953 really kicks off this atomic monster movie wave. It sets the formula.
How did it make that connection so explicit?
Right from the start. The opening sequence shows a nuclear bomb test in the Arctic called Operation Experiment, and boom, it wakes up this giant prehistoric dinosaur, the Rhedosaurus. There's even a scientist character who says something like, what the cumulative effects of all these atomic explosions will be, only time will tell. It directly points the finger back at humanity.
And Ray Harryhausen's stop-motion work, it brought that Rhedosaurus to life in this incredible way. It wasn't just a monster. It was like the bomb itself, rampaging through New York City. It made those abstract fears of cities being wiped out feel terrifyingly real.
Definitely. But maybe the smartest bit of allegory in that film.
The blood.
Yeah, the blood. When the beast gets wounded, its blood carries this ancient disease, spreading panic and death through the city even after it's hurt. It's such a powerful metaphor for radioactive fallout, invisible, deadly, lingering long after the initial blast. That was a huge public fear with all the atmospheric testing going on.
Okay, then the next year, 1954, we get Them Bum, which takes the atomic monster idea and kind of evolves it.
Right. It shifts from one giant monster to a swarm, a collective, organized, rapidly spreading threat. giant ants.
And again, the origin is explicit. Radiation from the first ever atomic bomb test, Trinity Site, New Mexico. So besides just being scary giant ants born from the bomb, how do they tap into Cold War anxieties?
Well, the ants became this really potent symbol for communism, or at least the American fear of it. Think about it. A ravenous collective society, no individuals, working underground, hidden, threatening to just overwhelm everything through sheer numbers and unseen spread. The film itself adds to the realism, too. It uses this almost documentary police procedural style, authoritative voiceovers, stark black and white look. And the director, Gordon Douglas, was smart. He holds back showing the ants clearly at first. You mostly just hear them, that creepy high-pitched chirping sound builds incredible suspense.
And that closing line from Dr. Medford, it really sticks with you, doesn't it?
Oh yeah, when Dr. Medford warns that by unleashing the atom, humanity opened the door to a new world and nobody knows what other horrors might crawl out.
Yeah.
That really hammers home the cautionary message. And if you look at these two films together, Beast and Vel de Femme, you see this interesting progression, almost a domestication of the threat. The beast starts way up in the Arctic, a remote Cold War frontier, and the monster has to travel to New York City.
Right, it comes from far away to us. But then that feels different.
Closer. Because the VO starts inside America. In the New Mexico desert, the birthplace of the bomb. The threat is literally homegrown. Then the ants travel from there, this symbolic heartland, to Los Angeles, and they infiltrate the city's storm drains, this hidden underground network right beneath people's feet. So you go from the Arctic frontier to the LA sewers. That geographical journey mirrors a psychological shift. The apocalypse isn't foreign anymore. It's contamination born right here, burrowing into the foundations of modern life. It really parallels how Cold War paranoia shifted from the Soviets over there to the potential enemy within.
So by the time we get to 1957, this path of fear in movies seems to complete its journey, turning fully inward. Jack Arnold's The Incredible Shrinking Man feels like the endpoint of all these 50s anxieties. The focus shifts massively, doesn't it, from saving the world to just saving yourself. Or maybe not even that.
Precisely. It moves from the geopolitical to the deeply existential, from world destruction to the dissolution of the individual self. And what's really striking is how mundane the cause is. The protagonist, Scott Carey, he gets exposed to this weird combination of radioactive mist out on his boat, and then later, common household insecticide. It suggests the source of doom isn't just giant bomb tests anymore. It's seeped into everyday life. It could be anywhere.
And his shrinking, it's such a potent symbol for what's been called the 1950s masculinity crisis. How does the film show that?
Well, as Scott gets smaller, he loses everything that defined him as a man in that era's terms. He can't work, can't provide. His relationship with his wife becomes impossible.
Right.
He actually says, "I felt puny." He's treated like a child, even lives in a dollhouse for a while. It's like a concentrated version of the anxieties American men were feeling in this new world of corporations, suburbs, and changing gender roles. That feeling of losing control, of becoming insignificant.
And the way the film twists the idea of home, the ultimate 50s sanctuary, that's terrifying.
Oh, it's brilliant and horrifying. As Scott shrinks, his safe suburban house becomes this savage wilderness. The family cat, it's a deadly predator. A spider in the basement, it's a mythological beast he has to fight for survival. A water heater leak becomes a flood.
It's the ultimate infiltration of that atomic age dread right into the home. There's literally no safe space left.
None at all. And director Jack Arnold, with his effects team, did an amazing job making it believable. They used oversized sets, clever camera tricks like split screens, rear projection. It creates this seamless, terrifying illusion of changing scale. You really feel Scott's fear and disorientation.
But the ending, that's what really sets it apart, I think. It's so radical for a sci-fi film back then. He's not cured. He doesn't die fighting.
No, it completely breaks convention. After this epic battle with the spider, he just accepts it. He shrinks down, slips through the basement window screen out into the grass, into the infinite smallness. And the film shifts gears completely. It drops the horror and goes into what one critic called a blaze of high metaphysical speculation. Scott's final voiceover. It's this incredibly profound meditation on existence.
Oh.
So close, the infinitesimal and the infinite. To God, there is no zero. I still exist.
It's surprisingly hopeful, almost spiritual, for a film about vanishing. This idea of connection between the smallest and largest scales, rejecting the idea of a final end.
Exactly. By this point, late in the decade, the fear isn't really political anymore. It's not about communism or even just the bomb. Unlike The Thing or Them, There's no external monster to defeat. The monster is Scott's own self dissolving.
The film moves beyond politics, grappling with huge questions about God, infinity, what it means to exist.
Yeah, it suggests the ultimate terror of the atomic age wasn't just physical destruction, but something deeper, more philosophical. Humanity's sudden awareness of its own smallness, its fragility in this vast universe it could now potentially destroy, but couldn't possibly understand. It's pretty heavy stuff for a shrinking man movie.
Absolutely. So we've taken this journey through the 1950s, and you can really trace this clear evolution of fear in sci-fi cinema. Starting with those external political debates in The Day the Earth Stood Still versus The Thing, then moving to the consequences of our own actions, our atomic hubris in The Beast from 20,000 Fathoms in Them, and finally, landing on that deeply personal existential dread in The Incredible Shrinking Man.
And these films, they're not just, quaint old creature features. They really are foundational texts for modern science fiction. The ideas they played with the enemy within, the dangers of unchecked science, apocalypse seeping into everyday life, those are still incredibly relevant allegories today.
Their power lasts because they asked such huge, difficult questions, didn't they?
They really did. In trying to deal with the shadow of the atom, they ended up holding a mirror to a society that was fundamentally terrified of itself.
Yeah. It makes you think. The most frightening monster unleashed in the atomic age wasn't really from outer space or dug up from the past. It was, and maybe still is, our own terrifying power for self-destruction and the kind of deep existential fear that comes with knowing that. The celluloid doomsday clock they started, maybe it's still ticking for all of us.